Hello, everybody. My name is Shanae Jones, and this is KNKY, which stands for Know the New Kinky You. And this is a platform where we get together to talk about things of importance in regards to sex and sexuality, especially in the Black community. And so, one of the reasons why I started this particular business is because I'm finally received my certification as a sex coach. I'm just waiting for all of the paperwork to come in. So, yay for me. But it's an opportunity for me to share a passion that I have with you guys because sex is a really, really important part of our natural lives. It's normal, it's natural, and it's something that we should be able to talk about in an elevated fashion. So here is the first of a 4-part series that kind of is going to take us a step back and just talk about the basics of sex and sexuality from an education perspective. So I'm trying to get the look, and I see the glare in the glasses, but I need them. So bear with me on trying to get these reflections and eye directions correct. So bear with me. So the first part of our series is going to be about pleasure versus performance. And when you were in school and learning about sex education, if you at all had any curriculum about sex education, they never ever talked about pleasure. It was merely a physiological type of thing where most of the time it was a conversation about what would happen when you have sex. You're going to get pregnant, you're going to catch a STD, STI, and end up dead and ruin the rest of your life if you have sex before marriage. There's a lot that goes into conversations about sex that don't have to end in death and pregnancy. So let's just do a quick recap of some of the things that we should have learned. First of all, when you were probably young, you didn't have a whole lot of people that you could probably feel comfortable going to talk to about sex and sexual issues. And you may have turned to your friends, older siblings, or like most of us, especially young boys, they turn to pornography. And the problem with pornography is that as an entertainment value, it is top notch. You can find all kinds of different interests, things that you probably didn't know existed with a quick search, but it's not a form to teach how people do things because these are actors. They depict scenes that are spliced and cut and action and melded together to create these scenes for our entertainment purposes, but people then associate this with how sex is in real life, and it really is not. It is a very sensationalized version of what sex is supposed to be. So in school, there are a lot of states still today that teach abstinence only, and abstinence only is what I described. No sex before marriage, reproductive issues, birth control maybe is talked about, but abstinence only means don't have sex, you don't need birth control. Where comprehensive sex education does kind of talk about birth control, but it still doesn't talk about pleasure. So with comprehensive sex education, it gets into a core standard for K through 12, where you're getting a consistent and straightforward guidance on the essential minimum core content for sex and sexuality that is developmentally age appropriate. So it provides rationale for teaching content at specific grade levels that is theory driven. So for instance, comprehensive sex education teaches children that sexual development is a normal, natural, healthy part of human development, and that it is not something to shy away from, but in order to talk about so that people have, if they have questions, that they have a place to go for real and concrete answers. When you have this sex education without the human connection piece, you start to mishmash all of the different things in life that you hear regarding sex. And the biggest myth and theory is that in order to have sex, you've only accomplished your goal if and when he and or she has orgasmed. And orgasm is not an easy thing for especially women to achieve without knowing their bodies and knowing how to put themselves in a state of mind and a physical state to help relax enough to achieve that particular goal. And even with men, Men have performance anxiety or can suffer from performance anxiety because there is a lot of pressure put on men to make a woman come. I have to make her come. I have to make her come. And, it's not your responsibility to make her come. A woman is in charge of her body, and you as the male can help guide her. And this is, again, in terms of a heterosexual relationship. We'll talk about different relationship dynamics, but in a heterosexual relationship, the male and the female, they work together to have sex. But pleasure-based sex is less about achieving an orgasm rather than being in the moment. So when you're in the moment and you're being mindful, you have to be present. You have to connect with your partner. You have to communicate so that you are bringing to each other the things that you enjoy as well as the things that you don't enjoy, because if you recognize both sides of that aspect, then you're in a better position to please your partner. So masturbation is something that probably should be taught, especially in an abstinence only curriculum, because at least it's teaching you self-pleasure, and perhaps if you knew how to pleasure yourself, you would be less curious about sex with someone else. So there are a lot of different things to kind of talk about with regard to how it is that we teach sex, the messages that we give our children, the messages even as adults that we get and we share. So, if you're in a committed relationship, after about 2 years of being in that relationship, things can kind of get a little routine. And so you still have to be in a position that even if you know the basics and the anatomy and the functionality, to be able to have that relationship and build that connection so that the experience of sex is pleasurable and not just an act that you go through in order to perhaps achieve an orgasm or not. So we'll talk more about orgasms and things like that. But I'm asking you guys to think back on your sexual education coming up. What was it like? What would you have liked to, based on your current age and experiences, what would you like to go back and tell your younger self about sex and what it is really like versus what it is that you were taught growing up? We have to have different conversations moving forward. Life is very expansive. It's not as black and white as it used to be. So this is part 1 of this series. We have 3 more parts to go. So I appreciate you joining in. This is Sinead Jones with KNKY. Follow me on all social media platforms at DOYOU KNKY. Do you KNKY? And I will see you guys next time. Thank you.